When I met President Trump first time, I said this to him, looked him in the eyes and said, it's important for a Norwegian Prime Minister to see a US President in the eyes and say, 100 kilometers from my border is the world's largest nuclear arsenal. And it is not directed against me, Mr. President, but against you. We monitor those submarines. We know when they leave port. We know when they test their new weapon systems, and we share it with you and we collaborate on monitoring that. When the American president stands in Davos saying that we have given everything to NATO and NATO gives nothing in return, it is wrong. It's plain wrong. We provide 1/3 of Europe's gas and almost 40% of UK gas. Important part of Polish independence on gas matters. The fact that we have critical raw materials that are important to the value chains which are now have to be defended against the attacks from states matters. The fact that we are developing space activities from the northern part of Norway because we are up north matters. And I really appreciate that the High Representative Kaja Kallas, my friend, is going up to Tromsø today to take part in Arctic Frontiers. That is really valued. So how do we respond to this world changing? 2 points. First of all, we have to deepen and anchor our European participation. And friends, this is not going to be an open door to the big questions that many of you ponder on membership. It's not the issue today. The issue today is to take as a point of departure where we stand, what we have, which is really a rule-based trade in Europe. We have 80% of our trade going to Europe and the United Kingdom. And this is, of course, strategically critically important in these times where the value chains are so important to protect independence. So I want to safeguard the European Economic Area. I want to expand the perspective of that cooperation by also including these new strategic areas, which really are not primarily about rules and directives, because the directives, you know how that works in the EEA, we take the bulk of them. But it is about identifying what economic security means in our times. What does it mean and how does it affect our value chains? And how will we cooperate with Europe to be part of the European, what shall I say, defense and promotion of its independence when we are being challenged by these powers who now, without scruples, use their power to keep Europe down. Europe will always be a mix of 27, 30, 35, you choose. And that is, of course, I would say, an immense dimension of why I love Europe, because it is diversity. But it is, of course, also fragility and some certain weakness, because you stand up against these major powers who challenge. Norway has to be part of this. That is why we have concluded strategic partnership on security last year. That's why our military industry is participating in the programs being developed by Europe. Because historically we find out that our military industry has historic reasons why they are composed as they are. But they matter to Europe's security. They matter to Ukraine. They matter to the protection of Ukrainian cities as we speak. Because air defense happens to be something we are good at, and so on. So my first reply here is really that strategic anchor in Europe that we have to spend time on, and that I will really focus on in what lies ahead for us. But then secondly, if we focus on pragmatism and geography, I think there is an enduring US dimension to our security, which we have to analyze and understand. And some of you have heard me say this before, but I'll mention it again because I think it is a reality that you alluded to, Kate. When I met President Trump first time, I said this to him, looked him in the eyes and said, it's important for a Norwegian Prime Minister to see a US President in the eyes and say, 100 kilometers from my border is the world's largest nuclear arsenal. And it is not directed against me, Mr. President, but against you. And it makes a difference that we monitor those submarines. We know when they leave port. We know when they test their new weapon systems. And we share it with you and we collaborate on monitoring that. And that is why I just have to say it rings completely false when the American president stands in Davos saying that we have given everything to NATO and NATO gives nothing in return. It is wrong. It's plain wrong. And I think a big part of the US knows that. because it matters every day, every hour. The collective security is not a charity. It is made out of self-interest. So for Norway's security, on this hard-nosed geographic reality, the following matters. We will strengthen our own defense, which means that in the coming years we will have to explain to many sectors of Norwegian society there will be less more in your area because there has to be more on strengthening our defense, rebuilding our naval defense, and most sectors of our defense. That is a collective domestic security obligation. Secondly, we will rely on allies and alliances. An alliance. So the NATO alliance, which I think is in really good focused shape on the north. We have really modernized the regional plans. 4,000 pages that Gahr brought to the table of leaders in Washington and The Hague. All 5 Nordic countries, members of NATO, all 5 under the command in Norfolk. We know how to do the collective collaboration on defense in the north. A month from now, we will have 25,000 troops exercising in northern Norway, northern Finland. And the 2 largest delegations there I saw was the French and the US, 4,000 to 5,000 troops each. And again, this is not charity. This is out of a mutual interest. We will preserve that. We will look after that, and we will remind our American partners about it. And if there's one trait over this last year, when the MAGA movement is moving this way, if anything, that collaboration in the north has become deeper and closer. Again, because I think deep down it really matters. But this is not enough for our security. Of course, the European dimension of this part of security is also vital. And that is also why we have a clear strategy from the Norwegian government to do our version of what it means that Europe has to step up. It is only logical. It's not because of Trump. I mean, he put pressure on it, but this has been the theme of US presidents in my lifetime, that Europe has to do more, has to pay for more. And we have to do more wisely. We should not do more one after one after one, but we have to do it in a coordinated way with capabilities, so we don't all buy the same things. You know, Norway, Sweden, and Finland have 250 fighter jets. And they will now exercise and work in a much more integrated way, and they are a formidable force of deterrence. So we will do our part in spending on defense. We will aim to spend wisely at defense, so it really fits into these regional plans. But then we will do more. We will deepen strategically our cooperation with the lead European partners, with the United Kingdom. Don't forget, friends, EU is critical for our security. But EU member states represent 20% of NATO's military capacity. 80% is non-EU. US, Canada, Turkey, UK, Norway. So when we buy our frigates from the United Kingdom, it is more than the purchase. This is about integration of our naval defense. In crisis, basically, these will be very, very closely working together. So when we buy our submarines from Germany and our tanks from Germany, it is also a deep industrial integration in security terms with Germany. And when we conclude agreements on security and partnership with France and Poland, we have other 2 major Northern European partners, partly in their outlook, in our pattern of agreements. And when we deepen, as ex-Prime Minister Kallas and now the High Representative knows, the joint expeditionary force between the Nordic, Baltic, UK and Netherlands, and we exercise together, it is because we are developing a Northern European dimension of security. And this has to be built further. For me, this is what I would call kind of Euro-NATO. It has to happen inside NATO, in my view, because NATO has the command structure, has the experience, has the appearance of the Americans. But we have to take more responsibility, both in the way we invest, in the way we plan, in the way we purchase, but also in the way we structure.